Hello, I'm Wendy Lathrop and welcome to GeoLearn. This is one of a series of programs I'm presenting on floods, floodplain management, and the National Flood Insurance Program. This particular program, N is for National Flood Insurance Program, will cover the background of how the program came to be so that we understand better its intent and how to implement it and our interactions with it on many levels. First, we need to look at what is the definition of floodplain management. If we look at FEMA's, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency's, own website, we see on their Flood Policy Index that floodplain management is defined as a decision-making tool, one that's going to help us make wise decisions regarding land use. That means that we're not necessarily keeping people out of floodplains, but if they're in floodplains that we've identified, how can we keep them as safe as possible to protect them on their property? But we also need to take into account the natural and beneficial functions of floodplains. Just as we have regulations that protect our wetlands, we need to take into account that floodplains are a necessary part of our lives. The program that we have these days originated with the idea of a unified national program for managing flood losses. This particular study was requested by President Johnson and issued in 1966. It suggested various ways of addressing the flooding problems that we have in our country. At that point in time, we suffered a number of severe floods, particularly along the eastern seaboard and along the Gulf of Mexico. And the greatest economic loss that people in our country were suffering was because they had no coverage for flood insurance. Flood insurance at this point in time, when we're talking about the 1960s, was something no longer included in a builder's policy, a homeowner's policy, a renter's policy, any kind of a standard composite policy. It was separated out into a separate policy. All flood insurance is basically a gamble between the flood insurance company that something will not happen and the policy purchaser that something will happen. Because floods do occur, the insurance companies were trying to minimize their risk by not automatically incorporating that coverage within our floodplains. Furthermore, President Johnson realized that we were not necessarily utilizing our floodplains in a way that was safe and sound. And so that was the reasoning behind the request for this particular document. So what did this report actually say? We can get an overview by looking at the table of contents. There's a significant amount of detail within this document, including many recommendations that were later incorporated into the first legislation creating the National Flood Insurance Program. Basically, it started out by saying we need to improve our basic knowledge and our basic understanding about what floods are, what flood risks are, and what affects those kinds of hazards in different areas.